Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with Amber Hawley. Amber is a couples therapist. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist who works with high performing entrepreneurial couples, helping them have more fulfilling relationships without sacrificing their businesses. She is the owner of a group therapy practice in Silicon Valley, wife, mom of 3 kids, and coffee drinker, host of the Couples Fix podcast, and co-host of My Biz Bestie podcast. Amber originally worked in the tech industry, but her love for people led her to pursue a career where meaningful relationships are at the center of everything she does. And I cannot agree with that premise more wholeheartedly, because in what I do, what I find is it doesn't matter how much spinach, how much broccoli, how many protein shakes, how many workouts you log in. If you're not in a happy relationship and you're not fulfilled, it can take its toll on you emotionally, physically, and every other way. So today we're going to deal with some strategies to help couples that may be high achievers and they're having trouble in their relationship because of that. We're going to talk about Valentine's ideas, since it is Valentine's Day. And we're also going to take a deep dive into how to, if you're having the same fight recurring over and over, what are some simple solutions? I have the Couples Fix therapist right here for you guys today. So make sure you ask your questions in the comments, since we are live, and you can be anonymous if you want to. I won't call you out. All right. So without further ado, am so excited to welcome Amber Hawley to the Sisterhood of Sweat.
Thank you for having me. This was so exciting. It's so impromptu. We just decided to do this last minute. So I really, I'm so happy. I love spreading love on Valentine's Day.
And it's fun to do things that are just off the cuff, just because you decided to. I think it's not pre-canned that way, and it can lend some exciting adventures to your life. And I'm speaking at PodFest this year in March, and so is Amber. And we met during a PodFest briefing on, we're doing Pechakucha, and I've heard that pronounced several different ways. I've heard it called Pichakucha, Pekakucha.
I don't know how if you're like PG or if you do clean, but I know when I keep hearing the name, I had a very different association with it, but but yes.
I was like, okay. But we met during the briefing, and he talked about how important it is to network with the people that are in the group, and how you could form these relationships and do great things together. So we connected right away, and then I realized, oh, she's friends with my friend Patrice Washington, the money maven from Steve Harvey's show, and she's had Patrice on her podcast too. Tell them how you met Patrice, because I love this story.
Oh yeah, so we met at an event, I think it was in 2018. And she just happened to be sitting behind me. We didn't know each other then. And it was a small event for women. It was probably like 60 something people. And she would make some comments, and I kept going like, oh yeah, absolutely. And we were agreeing with each other. And then we were like trying to during breaks and stuff, we started dancing. And then once her and I started dancing together, I felt like she was my soulmate. So anybody who's willing to dance during live events, I'm down for it.
And you know what? I think it's so fun the way you met. And we just had a girls' event. We didn't do a holiday party during the holidays because everybody's so crammed full. Yeah. We waited until January. We had a huge Sisterhood of Sweat party. All the women came. We brought healthy desserts, but we also had a huge dance party like 80s music. We were singing at the top of our lungs, dancing for hours. And yes, we did have some cocktails. It was so fun.
That sounds amazing. Especially the 80s music. I mean, it's just so good. It's so
It
good.
was too fun. I was just like, okay, this reminds me of a girl summer party like when I was a kid. It was like, you've got to have those bonding moments. And I think it makes your marriage better when you get that girl time and some time out and you have fun without your spouse sometimes. What do you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, everybody has different personalities, so I acknowledge that you've got to honor who you are and kind of the things that feed you or fill you up. But I do think for most people, having that time away from your partner and having fun and letting loose and, you know, just having that time for yourself, it's so important. And the more you do that for yourself, I feel like the more re-energized you feel also for your partner.
Yeah, and I think, of course, your partner needs to get that time out and do his guy stuff with his guys. And I think it makes you appreciate each other more.
Absolutely.
Because if you're together, like, you know, now I'm an empty nester. So if you're together 24/7, I think some of the magic could kind of go out. You got to spice it up a little.
Well, yeah, you become complacent, right? And then you have nothing to share. It's like you've spent all that time together. And again, I want to honor this is a spectrum. Like there are people who love being with their partner 24/7.
I'm not saying I don't love it, but I'm just saying. Like,
no, but it's true. I think we, even if you're enjoying it, you don't realize like, oh yeah, I need to kind of, like you said, spice it up or change it up a little bit. My husband and I went from an extreme of only having like one full day off together because of the stage of life we were in. We had 3 young kids. I worked Saturdays because he would be home on the weekends, and he worked a ton of hours because he was a UPS driver. So we barely had any time together. And now we've moved across the country because we wanted an adventure, and he's retired and I work from home, and now we're like always together. So it's very weird to go to that, but that's where it's like, I realize we enjoy each other's company and we're having fun, but I'm like, I need to get out. I need to go be with, you know, someone else for a little while.
Well, I think if you think back, it would be the same when you were growing up with your family. You had to have that time out. And I just think it makes you remember who you are, and it makes your partner have some appreciation for you. If you're always there, you're kind of like part of the house, part of the furniture.
Yes. Yeah. You take each other for granted, and, you know, it's just, yeah, you're like, yeah, you're in your routine.
Yeah. So we have the couples fix therapist here today. And so I'm just going to start off asking, what are, like, today we probably have tons of couples out there that still have not gotten their Valentine's Day gift.
Yes.
And they don't know what they're doing yet. I hate to say it, but this is probably true.
Yes.
Do you have any ideas for the women to get the men, first of all, as a gift for Valentine's Day?
Well, see, being a therapist, I would say it depends what your partner's love language is. So there are 5 different love languages. There's a fantastic book, and there's a free online quiz you can take from the person who wrote the book. But I think what's important is honoring whatever your partner's love language is. And sometimes we usually know this intuitively, but taking the quiz can be really helpful because it can change. So if your partner is somebody who loves getting gifts, then get him a gift. But if he's not, that would not be useful because he's just going to not appreciate it, right? And then you're going to feel pissed off because you went through all that effort. So, you know, so the 5 love languages are gift giving, words of affirmation, which is like, I love you, you look beautiful, you know, just being appreciative. There's physical touch. And okay, it's like when I have to do them, gift giving, words of appreciation, physical touch, quality time, and why am I forgetting the last one? Quality time, gift giving, physical touch. This is terrible. It's because I'm live, right? Like I know what it is, and it's a big one. That's
I have
terrible.
read the book. I
Yes.
have, but I'm trying to think which.
But I talk about this all the time.
It's physical touch, you said. It's words of affirmation. It's gift giving, your time.
Oh, acts of service. I knew it was
Okay.
one that
Yeah,
like,
doing something for the person.
yes, and that's a big one, and I think so. I think it's about honoring what is your partner's love language. And so if it's acts of service, like for my husband, that he loves that. And so like me cooking a meal for him, it makes him feel really loved and appreciated. He also likes, it's usually more than one, but there's that one that kind of stands out, right? So
Yeah.
I think if don't buy a gift unless it's something they actually enjoy receiving. That's what I say.
I hate to say it, but the sex in a sandwich always works. Sorry. It's like,
it is a very common thing. It is very common. And so, yeah, so I think it's about following that, and, you figure out what works then. Some guys love getting gifts.
I know, and now I love it when my husband, I can tell it's thought out.
Yes.
And that he really thought of me, like where I feel like, wow, that's so nice. He made the effort. He made sure I had flowers on the countertop, so I saw him first thing when I got up, or, he bought a massage, or he just let me know how much, like in a card. I'm a big one on loving, heartfelt thoughts. Like if he just writes out something very heartfelt, that just makes me melt. I love that.
So probably words of appreciation is something that's really high for you. And that's the thing. I think sometimes the gift giving one gives a bad rap because people think it's superficial. And I disagree, because I think it's exactly that. It's, me, you thought about me, you really put some time and effort into this. And like, I felt like you understood me when you bought that gift. And I think that's what's important.
You know what I like.
Yeah.
And you care about what I like. You want me to have the things that I like, and it just shows that the person really thought of you, I think.
Exactly. So figuring that out, I think, is the important thing. And and then it's just doing something. And for those people who either aren't big on celebrating Valentine's Day or haven't just figured out what they're doing yet, because for whatever season in life they're in, they haven't, they didn't have the energy, and now they're like, okay, it's Friday night, what do I do? For those people, I think, the spontaneity is really great. Like, it's great to plan things. And obviously there are some things that just need to be planned out. But I think there's something about, hey, let's just do this. Let's go wherever. Let's go out to eat. Let's go do this. Let's go on a walk. Whatever it is the thing. Let's have sex in the daytime. Like, whatever your thing is, do it, And like you said, it's having little adventures and being spontaneous, I think, is undervalued sometimes.
And we were talking about Valentine's Day last night, and he started talking about making reservations, and I said, I really don't like to go out on Valentine's Day. I don't like being out in the crowd of people and the wait and the whole deal.
Yeah.
Which is weird because it's an opposite from probably years past, but I like staying in and making it special and having a special meal, and let's, I don't know, take a whirlpool and give each other a massage and have a great dinner and watch some movies and be comfortable. And then tomorrow we'll go out for Valentine's Day when everybody else is done.
Exactly. And I think, a lot of people feel that way. I think, I forget what it's called, but that's why a lot of people started celebrating on January 14th. Because it's kind of like, first of all, everything's overpriced. It's so overinflated in your face, and it's busy, right? So
oh my gosh. I'm
for those of us,
yeah, exactly.
For those of us who've been together, especially when you've been with your partner a long time, I feel like, I have no interest in going out tonight. My husband actually, for the first time in our 22 years, I think it's 22 or 23 years, I just forgot. Oh, it's 23 because it's 2020. 23 years. He actually made reservations today for lunch. And I was like, wow,
Perfect.
I was like,
I
might
wish we would
pass
have
out from
thought of
shock.
lunch and lunchtime is like, oh yeah.
It was wonderful. And, and he hasn't done that. But yeah, we've gone through those times of like, we used to go out for the fancy dinners, then we had kids and it was like, let's just cook something nice. And, but yeah, changing it up. It's just all different. So yeah, tonight we plan on, we have one of our kids as a basketball game. So the plan is after that to just come home and yeah, have some good food and maybe watch a movie. It sounds amazing.
It sounds amazing. I already have my whole evening planned out and I'm super excited about it. And I was in the middle because we just decided spontaneously to do our podcast. I was making my favorite from the past, as I always remember one year when my mother made sugar cookies and made them in special hearts with pink frosting. And so I did it every year for my children. And now I make paleo sugar cookies, which are made with coconut palm sugar, almond flour. They're on the healthy version. So very healthy, not any, junk, and they'll be pretty and they'll be a little sweet. So I'm kind of making those.
I think that sounds amazing.
So I do love Valentine's Day. It's always been one of my favorite holidays since I was a kid. One Valentine's Day, I remember my grandfather, I was sick and it was always my favorite. I always loved going and getting the Valentines from the boys and, just the whole bit. And I was sick and I was home and I was missing it. And my grandfather brought over candy hearts, the ones that say, I loved you, be mine, and a card and a special gift. I think it was like a stuffed animal of some sort. And it just meant so much to me that he didn't want my Valentine's Day to be ruined. So I've always had a special place in my heart for Valentine's, and I celebrate it with my entire family.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And, as somebody who specializes in working with couples and, I'm a big proponent of healthy, happy relationships. Like, I love the idea. I think there can be a lot of pressure in Valentine's Day.
Yeah, right.
So that I think is hard, but
some people don't have fond memories of it.
Yeah. And I know, like, I'll speak for my husband and I, like, for years it was like, I don't want a big thing on Valentine's Day. We like, because let's actually show love towards each other all year long. Well, right. So to me, that was the goal. But for some people, they need that reminder of like, okay, prioritize your relationship. And if anything, let this be the jump start. So however you feel about Valentine's Day, let today be the jump start for you thinking about your partner and putting a little extra effort in, because I do think complacency, it happens. And that doesn't mean we don't love our partner. It doesn't mean we don't have a good relationship. It just means that like we have a lot going on, especially high achievers, right? So it's like, how do I find time to prioritize this? And so for me, that's where I've kind of landed back in that space of, let's just make this the jumping off point to being thoughtful and letting the people in our life know we love them.
And so what is your suggestion? Because my husband and I are both high achievers. In fact, when we met, why it worked is we never saw each other until like 9:30 at night.
You are not alone in that.
And we were like, okay, lights out time. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, 9:30 at night, that was when we, like, hey,
Right. Well, yeah. And that can be helpful, never seeing each other. And honestly, sometimes that's why some relationships last as long as they do, because they didn't have time for each other and they might not have been the best fit. But there are those times, like you're saying, if you're just a high achiever and it's like you have all these other things going on, probably it was so good for you too, because you had somebody else who valued the same things as you. Like, obviously you're saying like, my career was important to me and all this other stuff, and they never felt like slighted by it. And so I think that can be a really good thing as well. Yeah, that's the struggle when you have two really high achievers, is it can be really easy to be in that mode. And when your partner's really accepting of that, then there isn't really this push to like say, hey, but wait a minute here, you still have to pay attention, right? Because if you're not connecting with your partner, now if you come home at 9:30 and you connect, that's great. But if you come home and you're like, I am totally wiped out, I'm just exhausted, and you're gonna have days like that, but if it's all the time, that's when the relationship starts to suffer a lot.
Right, right. Because it's really important to have emotional intimacy and connection. Connection is number one. If you don't feel connected to your partner, then I think that's a problem. What are ways, because I think women notice it quicker when there's not the emotional connection. Like, I think we're big on that. What are ways, guys, because there's guys out there listening, what are ways they could find emotional intimacy, or, you know, and they don't have a lot of time, but emotionally connect with their wives every day?
Well, I'm going to say this goes for both genders, because I guess living in Silicon Valley for 22 years, you see some high achieving people. And I think that both men and women can get into that rut of like feeling completely overwhelmed and not prioritizing the relationship. So it does go both ways. But what I would say is like,
spoke to the men first and then spoke to the women, because I feel it is a little bit different.
yeah. So I guess I go back to, what is your partner's love language? Like, that's really important, because I think about this one couple I worked with, and they were kind of indicative of quite a few couples, but where the husband kept buying his wife lavish gifts, and she kept saying, I want you to spend time with me. My love language is quality time. Like, she had read the book. And he continued to not spend time with her and buy her lavish gifts. And she's like, if I want something, I'll buy it for myself. And he really loved her, and he really meant well, but he couldn't get past, like, he couldn't figure out how to prioritize the time, right? How to make space for her with all the other demands in his life, you know, his business, his kids, his family, you know, all extended family, all of that. And so I think it's about probably your partner's been telling you if you're disconnected. You just need to really listen and just freaking do the thing that they've been telling you to do. Like, that's the one thing where we were literally like almost like hitting ourselves in the head of like, I don't understand. We've been meeting for months. Why are you not spending time together? And so it's just one of those things where like your partner's probably telling you, so listen to them. The second thing is, though, even if quality time is not your top love language, you do have to have quality time in every relationship. And that is, sometimes it's like understanding it doesn't have to be quantity. Every once in a while, you need like good long stints together. Because I've seen that as well, where people really just never have like extended time just alone as a couple. But being present. So if you're gonna get home at 9:30 at night, and then, you know, you have your wind down routine, whatever, and then you sit together, actually be focused and present. So you have a conversation where your partner doesn't feel like they start talking and they can tell like you're kind of almost looking at your watch, or you start to fall asleep.
Like you're bored with them.
Yes. Like,
yeah.
Or it's just like, I
kiss
feel
of death.
preoccupied. And I would say I see more preoccupation than I do boredom. The ones where it's boredom, yeah, it is the kiss of death. It is so bad. Like, that's not a good combo. But it's more like they're like, oh my gosh, I have work to do. I forgot to send an email. Like, you know, those kinds of things. I think that preoccupation. And so, you know, for a lot of couples, you know, I work with them individually to figure out what works for them, but coming up with like a game plan of, okay, we need to put our phones away. You know, we need to have boundaries in what's grabbing our attention and actually being together. And so many couples, I think, have this where it's like they're go, go, go all day. They give to their kids, they give to their jobs, whatever. And then they come home and they're so exhausted. And so all they manage to do is watch TV together. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing per se, because something my husband and I love doing as well. Like I love TV, but if that's all you did and you never talked, then that's a problem.
Right. If you're always attaching to something else and never connecting and speaking to each other, that can cause a major disconnect.
Yeah, there's not a connection there. And if you're always looking this way, you're always looking at the screen, be it the phone, the computer, the TV,
the person
whatever.
is going to feel not seen.
Exactly.
And so not seen, not heard.
Exactly. Now I feel, and this is going to date me, but I feel like the invention of like TiVo and DVRs could be a lifesaver, because I can remember those days where you couldn't pause TV and then people would interrupt your show and you would get so pissed off. But what's happened is it's like, okay, pause and then have that discussion if it needs to happen. But it's one of those things where, again, that can be fun. Like we enjoy doing that too. Like I said, we're planning on watching a movie tonight. But you need to have time together where there's no other barrier between the two of you, where it's just you guys talking, and you need to have fun. Like it shouldn't always be so serious.
Well, I think that it's huge to do things, some new adventures. Like my husband and I did an impromptu, like the comedy class, like where you're just
an improv class.
Yeah, like where you're just like, and we did it together, and he was so funny, and I was funny. We were funny together, and then we would laugh the entire time at everybody. And that was a really fun adventure for us.
I love that. I think that's brilliant. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to do an improv class.
Yeah,
but I love that.
That was really, really fun.
I love that, because improv classes are teaching you to listen and play off of each other and be relational. So I think it's such good training as what it is for being a good partner.
Oh my gosh.
But it is so like scary and vulnerable and like fun. I love that idea.
It was really great for the couple thing, and just in life in general, a yes and. Instead of taking the whole idea of somebody's and trying to make it so different and just yours, you expand upon the idea they had, and you're yes and. You want this, how do I cooperate with that idea? And I found myself doing that in the studio, and with my husband, I thought, okay, what's yes and instead of yes but?
I love that. I mean, I really do think it could teach couples some amazing skills just for that alone, right? That being open and not shutting our partner down when they're talking about things that we just don't see it the same way, because let's face it, that's going to happen. You're two different people. I absolutely love that idea. I'd never thought of it, but I love that idea.
It was super, super, super fun adventure. And another thing we did, we got out of the box this year. We went to Ireland together, and that was an amazing trip. It was so good for us and for our marriage. I remember my husband turned to me the day we got back, and he said, that was the best vacation of my entire life.
Oh, I love that. I love it.
So getting out of the box is huge, I think.
It is. And going, especially, I mean, not everybody can make a foreign country happen, but I think there is something about being together in that, because it is so far outside your comfort zone.
We're having a new adventure together.
Yeah, I love that. And it's also extended time together, right? And
out of the country, nobody could call him because he gets lots of business calls.
Oh, that's even better.
I was like,
even
better. Have to come back. Can we stay another week?
But yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about, though, is I see so many couples that are starved for that time together. And, there's so many demands on our attention and on our time in, our modern day. And so it's hard to do, but I think it's so rewarding and important to do.
I love that. I love that. So creating new adventures together is key. And for us, it was especially key because I was always a mom. I was a mom before he married me. And so, the kids came along for so I was a mom as long as he's known me. Then we're empty nesters. We had to really figure that space out.
Exactly.
And how do we go on a vacation that isn't, oh, I remember when Tiff and Mike did this, where it was really centered on us as a couple and not as mom and dad.
Yeah, that exactly. And that's it. Whether it's your kids, or for some people, they go on trips with, like, they have a really good core of friends that travel together, or they go with their extended family. And I think there's a lot of value in that. That's a lot. All of those things are important and they're fun. But I think if that's all you ever do, that's problematic, because you do need that time where it's just the two of you to have that space. And I'm not saying you have to do it all the time, but I think it's really important to carve out that time where, yeah, there are no other distractions.
I love that. And so time together, have new adventures, create time together. And then, like, how important is it for couples to learn how to fight in a correct manner? Like, what would you say? I personally find it's not good if you don't fight at all, ever.
I would agree.
Because that means you're not truly
You're not talking about stuff.
Yeah, you're not. So what I want to know is, what is the best way for couples? And I hate to use the word fight, disagree, fight, whatever. What's the best,
well, let's face it, they fight.
Advice you can give for couples out there when they are going to have a disagreement? Because we will.
Yes, and they do. And actually, interestingly enough, the research shows that, there are couples who just kind of go all out and like scream at each other and whatever. And, that's not ideal, but actually they say that they have more relationship satisfaction than the couples who are not talking about anything. And so it's not about, like, I think we get caught up in, like, there's this right way to fight politely, and that means you're better, and not necessarily. Now, granted, if you're getting really ugly in those fights and you're, tearing each other down, and, ideally name calling is not great, but if you're really going nasty and going for the jugular, that's going to have an impact on you. So I think it's one of those things to, like, you can express, just because you're yelling loudly, some people that would really shut them down. So it also depends, like, what's going on for your partner as well. You gotta, some couples couldn't handle that, but it's really important to try to not go for the jugular. So I would say, we call it the kitchen sink. Like, if you're going to fight about something, fight about the one thing you're fighting about, not every single thing that's ever pissed you off about your partner because you've been holding it in. And so you're going to keep, every time you fight, you bring every single thing. Remember 15 years ago when you did this, I'm still pissed off, like, bringing up all of that stuff. Do not do that. I think that leads to such disaster, because then you're just going on and on and on, and you're not even, there's no chance to resolve. And so when you stay focused on, hey, I'm pissed off because when you said this last night in front of others, I felt embarrassed. Like, if you keep it about that moment, then you can have resolve. There's a better chance, right? Like, they could still not agree with you, but I think it's when we do the kitchen sink, we throw every single thing in, that it gets to that point of, like, it's really unproductive. And I think that's the key. Is it productive or not? Right? Yeah. We're just going to get mad at each other. We're going to do that. The more connected we are, I think we can handle those little blips. But I do think it is important to try to talk about things before they become like a level 10. But that's not always going to happen, right? So that's what I would say. I would say keep it focused on the one thing that you're fighting about. Try not to be disrespectful. That's a huge one. Again, like, you start fighting, and then, like, if he says, oh, you're just like your mother, and that's the one thing that's going to cut her to her core, don't do that. Stop doing that.
Don't try to hurt your partner.
Exactly. Just don't go for the jugular. And because even after you resolve that fight and you kind of make peace, that one's going to stick. And that the feeling of feeling disrespected, or feeling like, if they feel that there's not safety, that every time we have a disagreement, you're going to go to that place that just hurts me so much, you know? So I think that's an important one. Like for parents, I think often like saying like you're a shitty parent, like I would say try never to do that, even if
So
you think they are.
how would you recommend for people to approach each other instead of attack when they have something uncomfortable they want to talk about?
Okay, so I think there's a couple of tactics. One is kind of like the soft lead in, like letting them know like, hey, I want to talk to you about something that's, been upsetting me, and I know it might be hard to hear, or that way you can kind of set the tone. And so instead of just being kind of blindsided, although they still may feel blindsided. So I think doing like a soft lead in to let them know that you have something difficult to talk about. And in doing that, also make sure that you guys can have that time to sit and talk about it. So you don't want to be like, oh, hey, we're headed to a party. Hey, I just want to let you know, like, you're in the car on the way there. Like, that's not the time, right? So
Yeah, timing is everything.
Timing is everything. Timing and tone. So I think that soft lead in comes from a place of, look, I'm not screaming at you. I'm not attacking you. I'm trying to be thoughtful, and I'm kind of leading in a soft thing. That's a really good tactic in saying like, hey, I need to talk about something that I'm feeling upset about, and making sure you have the space so that there's no, that the TV's not on, you're sitting there, you're facing each other, and that you have, more than 15 minutes, or I would say try not to fight for too long or have these disagreements for too long, but make sure you have like 20 minutes. If you have 3 minutes, don't do it. Right. I mean, that's different than saying like, hey, you're pissed. Yeah, it's different. I mean, you can do that if it's the small thing of like, hey, that pissed me off. Don't, that like offended me. That's different, right? Like that can be done in the moment. But if it's something that's been really bothering you and it's big, and you feel like they might be a little defensive about it, that's when I'm talking about doing the soft lead in.
Thinking about the talk and the right timing.
Exactly.
And the approach is everything.
It is big. And there's another tactic, and this isn't always appropriate, but often it can be, that we call it like, I've heard it called other things. It's like the corporate sandwich idea, where it's like you tell them something nice, you tell them the constructive feedback, and then you tell them something nice. So that can be really effective, and it's not always appropriate, right? Because there are times where you're really deeply hurt, and that's not going to be the way you're going to approach it. But being able to say like, if you were going to give some feedback around like, say, parenting, which is a really touchy one, right? To say like, I really loved that you approached our son, and how you were spending time with him yesterday, and I just really love how you make that a priority. However, I felt like this, I felt like you came down on him hard. You're going to give him the negative feedback. I didn't have an example plan, sorry. And then you come back and you end it with the nice thing, so you're like saying, I love when you do this. This I felt was a challenge and I didn't like it, or I don't think that that's very helpful. And then but I just, I know you're such a good dad, and I'm so glad that our son has you as a dad. So it's like this reminder of, I don't think you're a horrible person. I'm just having a problem with this one behavior, right?
Right. Because I think sometimes people hear things different than what you're saying them as well. So when you are going to say something that may be taken as criticism, I do think you should sandwich it between two layers of praise.
Yeah, it goes a long way, because wouldn't we want, and it has to be genuine, you can't make stuff up. People feel that. But I do think, one, it helps us keep in mind, hey, this is a person I love and who really is wonderful in many ways. So it helps us kind of maintain our perspective when we're talking about the challenging thing, because we have that. But it also lets people feel cared for, and still, we're imperfect beings. So there's going to be things we don't like that each other does, right?
Well, at the end of the day, we all want to feel important. We all want to feel seen and heard and valued.
Exactly.
Yeah, because, and also just remembering we're on the same team helps.
I know. And that's a big piece of it. And that's why that perspective of like, we're in this together, and, I'm just telling you something that kind of hurt me, or, you know, or that that causes like stress for me, or that I don't like, that I don't see, that I'm concerned about, that kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean we're not on the same team.
And what about partners? This one is kind of a perplexing one, that have been together for years, but they have unresolved issues, and it's like a dog chasing its tail. They just fight over the same thing, over the same thing, over the same thing, over the same
Yeah.
thing. What is the solution for that one?
Well, so there's a couple of things. There are like, sometimes people need to go to therapy. I'm a big proponent of couples therapy, because I will tell you, almost every couple I know has that, right? And the ones who say they don't aren't talking. So everybody has that recurring fight thing that they've been going through, or there's somebody who's done a lot of therapy and they're super enlightened. I think sometimes therapy is the answer. However, there are other times there are times where there's unresolvable fights. We have these disagreements and there's never going to be a resolve. So sometimes it's about accepting that. So how do you find acceptance in that? And what does that look like? So sometimes I tell people, okay, we can either change what our behavior is when I'm working with a couple in the room. It's like, we can do this, or you can keep doing what you're doing and be miserable, or you can just accept that this is never going to change and find a way to make peace with it. And that depends on the severity of that, right? Or you can separate. Like, you get to choose, but that's kind of your options right there.
I remember one time my brother said, well, I've just learned as the years rolled on to accept my sister as she is and celebrate her as she is, versus, wanting her to be a certain way. And I think that's part of it, is just being able to accept your partner the way that they are, their differences. And unless they're like doing something that totally is unacceptable, but like something, detrimental to your health, or, something out there. But for the most part, you got to learn to, I think, embrace each other's differences.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think there are those deal breakers, which are actually not very many when we really look at those kinds of things, what the deal breakers are. And like you're saying, like, abuse, and there's other things that become deal breakers for us. And everybody has their own individual deal breakers. And then there are those things where it's like, this is so problematic or triggering for me. It's not that I absolutely am going to leave you over this, but it's really impacting my ability to connect to you. And so I think those are important things to talk about or to try to resolve. Because often, like you're saying, it'll be the same argument, or sometimes it looks different, but it's the same dynamic. So addressing that is important. But I think there's a lot of things that if we genuinely can get to a place of acceptance, it just is so transformative. And there are some things, like, we don't mean acceptance like, okay, fine, it is how it is, and I'm really building resentment, because that's what I see a lot of women do, is they'll say, okay, that's fine, I'll accept it, and they're stuffing all their feelings down and they're really miserable. And then you do that for 15 years and yeah, it's like, even then it's like,
it's
the
just
point
not
of no
good
return
for either of you.
No, it's miserable, and you deserve to be happier than that. And so I think that there are times to address it. And then there are things like, you really say like, hey, I don't like this. I would prefer it's different, but that's not how life works. So I can genuinely accept it without any resentment and without it impacting me at all. And so, I think that is very transformative, acceptance.
And I think, like you said about the resentment thing, you're going to both make mistakes in the marriage. It isn't just one or the other, or in the partnership, or in the relationship, the boyfriend girlfriend thing. And if, as long as it's not like your deal breaker, whatever that is, you got to be able to forgive each other, because otherwise you're going to have so much baggage and resentment that how could you ever find your way to love? I think you just got to practice forgiveness.
Absolutely. And I think that is a huge piece of it. And so that forgiveness is a part of acceptance, right? But I do think it's really saying, like, remembering too, like, I get all of this amazing stuff in you as a partner and all of these things I love. And some of those traits come with the traits that we don't love so much.
Right.
And so it's like, well, if I think about, like, I love how you're so stable and you make me feel so secure and you're so consistent and you show up and you're a great provider. If that's something you value, and then you're like, oh, but you're super boring and and I don't like how you aren't willing to take more risks. Now, I'm not saying you can't ask for that stuff, because I still think it's important, but sometimes it's like you kind of realize, like, for them, like, there's a reason they have all that stability and all that other good stuff with them. And so it's like, you know,
it's good to remind yourself why you got married in the first place, or why you're with that person in the first place, and what their good qualities are. I know Joel Osteen always says, if something happened to that old goat, you'd wish you were with them. Like, basically, you're playing, but if they weren't there and you were not having supper with them and you were not, you'd miss them, you'd be lonely. So it's a good, I guess, just rule to kind of really
keep
reflect
perspective.
upon.
Yeah. And it's one of those things. And, again, certainly being with my husband for 23 years, like, there are so many things that I value and love about him so much. And there are things that make me nuts. And then there were things where, like, this was happening way too much. And I was like, I need to just, like, move past that. I need to understand that, all of his values and all of his beliefs that made him this great person that I love also make him these certain things. Like, so I just accept that he's a Republican and I no longer let it bother me.
I love it. I mean, I think it's important. Like, if you're a high achiever and he's a high achiever, I don't know if that is, but we are both high achievers, to celebrate each other, to, not like, if one achieves more than the other, I think in high achievers, that could be a dangerous place. Like, you see it in Hollywood. One person keeps getting movies, the other person doesn't. I think it's really important, whatever space you're in, to celebrate your partner when they win.
Yes. And that, like you're saying, that's unique when you have two high achievers. My husband is not. He is more of that, like, he's the happy in the background guy, which
he's more like chill, more.
Yeah, he couldn't be more type B, and he's super supportive. And I think for us that is such a good balance for us. But I obviously work with a ton of couples where both are high achievers. I work with both. Obviously, there's plenty of people where that their partner is just this really great support to them. And then there are the ones where they're both high achievers. And I agree with you that sometimes, it can bring up stuff of feeling like I'm not attaining the things I'm wanting to attain, and here my partner is, and that makes me feel less than. And so those are just things, that's why you got to have those conversations. Like, if you just keep it all to yourself, and I don't mean like make them feel bad, but just talk about the feelings you're having, that's a huge thing, right? Because otherwise you're just building in all that stuff.
Well, maybe they like what you're doing, wish they were doing it. There's something you're doing that's triggering something, and you could just encourage them to go do that thing it is that they've been wanting to do.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I'm a true believer of, I feel like our relationship with our significant other is one of the most important things in a factor in our quality of life, because our partner is either going to be the person that makes us, helps us, not makes us, but helps us become the best version of ourselves and really encourages us. And so it just makes our life better. Right. Or they're going to be that person that drags you down and causes a lot of, trauma and drama and stuff. So I think who you choose as a significant other is so important.
It's huge, because if you're with somebody that doesn't build you up, and they are that partner that constantly whittles away at you, it's going to take a toll. It's going to take a toll. And I don't think any of us are committed to that.
Yeah. And it's really hard. It impacts how you view yourself, your self-esteem, and it's really, really, really tough. And again, not that somebody else is responsible. It's not like, oh, my partner is responsible for making me be my best self. That's not it
No,
at
no,
all.
no. But they
Yeah.
shouldn't be, if you're continually trying to be your best self and you're having a great day, they shouldn't continually be the dark cloud in your life.
Exactly. Exactly. A
Oh my
devil's
God.
advocate, maybe, but not a dark cloud. I'm just kidding.
Well, sometimes there's that on your shoulder. Well, what about
Totally, totally. Oh, yes.
oh, I need somebody sometimes because I am a dreamer.
Yes. And I feel like most of us do. We need that. And especially if we're dreamers,
For a balance, for a
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, this has been such an awesome Valentine's Day conversation with you.
Yeah. I know. I'm so glad that it was like we connected yesterday
And
in
today,
like a
here
10
we
minute Zoom call. And
are.
today, here we
It's
are. So I'm so excited.
maybe
So
have a dance party.
I know. I'm like, so definitely to
Back it
encourage
up.
people to be spontaneous. You never know what can happen.
I love it. I love it. Well, tell everybody about where they can connect with you and some of the offerings that you have.
Sure. The best place to find out a little more information about me would be at amberhawley.com. That's HAWLEY.com. Amber, HAWLEY. But I also have the Couples Fix podcast, as you said, and the My Biz Bestie podcast, where we help female entrepreneurs find their business support system. So it's all about encouraging women to find that support, because sometimes, well, one, our partners can't be our only person of support, but sometimes we don't have supportive partners and we
Oh
need
my gosh.
other people in our lives to help us. So
I know, I mean, this is just me again talking. I think a lot of the times, I mean, that's the biggest thing for me is women supporting women. And I developed the Sisterhood of Sweat because once upon a time, I didn't have the support that I needed and the empowerment and the confidence. And I just want to have that place for women that I didn't have when I was leaving an abusive relationship behind and didn't know what I was going to do. And I just feel that being that soft space for each other, it really translates. You can help so many people out there. If you're what you have, there are so many women out there. Unfortunately, there's probably just as many men, but they're not supported by their partner. And they may be alone, trying to make it in their career and not getting support at home.
yeah, exactly. And like I said, even if you are, I still think the dynamic of having, those female friends that support you and really build you up is unique, because you need more than just one person to have a support network. And that, as therapists, that's our huge thing, like protective factor, and makes your life a lot better, is having that support network. One person is a partnership, a network is more than one. So we need those people in our lives. And yeah, I think it's what makes it richer.
And I love therapy. Therapy is great. You have that person as a sounding board that's qualified, and that is, a
And neutral.
great support. Yeah, neutral, a support system. I talked to mine today at 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and we do phone, which is great because I don't have time to go travel somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's awesome to have, I'm still healing from many of the things that have happened to me from childhood on up. And it's great, and no shame in finding that support system that you need. It makes you feel so much better.
It does. Yes. And I agree. And I think, nowadays there's so many options. And like you're saying, you don't even have to leave your house. Like, I see the value in in-person therapy. And I did that for gosh, like 14 years or longer. But now, because I just made this big move, now I'm doing everything virtually. And so, yeah, there's people out there for you for sure, whether it's in your city or there's virtual or phone or whatever. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value.
I love the virtual, and I'm a huge fan of the virtual. I mean, the in-person's great, but I love the virtual, and I just love what you're doing. I love the name Couples Fix. I love that, and you're a special person to be doing what you do. I just want to acknowledge you so much for being in that space, because it is a needed space. We need people like you that can help couples. So hats off to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it was fun. It was such a great talk. And yeah, people can hit me up and ask me questions, and I would love to connect with people. And I can't wait to see you in like 3 weeks.
I am so excited. I can't wait. We already know each other.
I know.
That's going to be so fun. And is your husband coming?
No, because we have 3. Our kids are 5, 7, and 10, so they're in school. But I will be with my biz besties and a bunch of other fun people. So I can't wait.
I'll see you there, and I'm ready for our dance party to begin.
Done.
Thanks for coming on today, and thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Sisterhood of Sweat. Bye everybody. Happy Valentine's Day.